The Larimer County Board of Commissioners. Today is Monday, November 25th, 2019. I'm Tom Donnelly, Chairman of the Board of Commissioners, joined by Steve Johnson, Commissioner from District 2, John Kafals, Commissioner from District 1. Our Assistant County Manager, Lorinda Volker, is here at the controls. This afternoon, the Board has a work session with our Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources Department to discuss a number of relevant issues. Leslie, are you going to kick us off?
In, yes.
Okay, so why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what's going on?
Okay, Leslie Ellis, Community Development Director, and I'm standing in for Laurie this afternoon. She may be here a little bit later. We actually only have 2 items on the agenda. We really only have 1 item on the agenda, the topic that Mark Peterson is here to discuss with you, the truck limits. So we can jump into that, and then I'm here if you have any questions or anything else you'd like to know about community development, but otherwise that's it. So we may give you back some time today.
Yeah, sipper.
Yes.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, Mark Peterson, County Engineer, and
Brian Praken, Traffic Engineer.
Hi,
so
Brian.
we came back to briefly discuss or go through potential what are being referred to as commercial semi-truck restrictions that could be under consideration for application to Country Club Road. There have been a temporary restriction was placed on that roadway earlier this year. That's still in effect, and so this is really to give you a little more background and information, try to answer any additional questions you might have as you decide whether or not you want to consider that further in making it a long-term restriction. I don't want to call it a permanent restriction because any action like that is really, it's the Board of County Commissioners' discretion, and it may be a choice to, if you put something in effect now, it could be lifted or removed at some point in the future. Just quick background in terms of traffic volumes that we have up in the road system in that part of the county. Country Club Road is that corridor identified in orange, and so currently we've got between 5,000 and 10,000 trips a day on that segment of Country Club Road east of LeMay, and under that projected in the 2040 timeframe that was used in our transportation master plan, we would get over 10,000 on that road segment, and it starts to approach the capacity or exceed the capacity that's identified for that kind of a roadway.
Are there any connections going to be made on that map in the future? I know with the Seninga or...
Yeah, I'll show you some of those, yeah.
Just curious how that'll affect the traffic flow, the 4,000 units or whatever.
And again, this was just going over what was shown in our transportation master plan, and that's really based on capacity only. It's not taking into consideration safety needs or anything like that. But if you look at traffic volumes,
So
there's
can you go
projected.
back once?
Yeah.
This reminds me of your convoluted Owl Canyon slide that you brought a couple weeks ago. So you show this massive increase on the piece of road that you're interested in, right? Just like you did on Owl Canyon. Where the hell does all that traffic go? It's all you don't show any growth at all except a tiny amount to the west of there. Where's all that additional? Where's that 20,000 extra truck trips going to go, or traffic trips going to go?
These aren't truck trips. This
is all trips.
This is total traffic.
Okay, so if it increases by 20,000, why didn't anything else increase?
No,
by
it's in that range. So it's in the range of 10 to 23,000.
It's double
It's gonna go up
what
to
the
about-
other road segments are. There's only one road segment coming in. How can that be true?
Well, I'll give you I'll give you numbers rather than ranges in a future slide here, and we can delve into that more.
Okay, then we can talk about who cooked it here. All right.
What's shown for an improvement on this roadway in our transportation master plan is just future need to provide widening of shoulders. So it's not that you would add additional laneage. It's doesn't necessarily, based on future traffic projections, get into that range where you would need a center turn lane. But again, this is just strictly transportation master planning level improvements.
It doesn't get to that level?
Gets
20,000 trips a day?
We're not showing it getting to 20,000 trips a day. The range, going back to that, it's somewhere, the ADT is between 10 and 23,000. The 24 number on that road segment is actually 12,000,
So why do you make it 10 to 12,000? as red?
because these are ranges that were used for
The
our
ranges
entire.
for what? For this slide?
Well, and if you get up to over 23,000, you're moving into the need for an arterial designation with a center turn lane or multiple lanes.
So what does the green mean on this slide? The second one?
That's shoulder widening.
Okay. So that's a planned improvement.
That's what the transportation master plan indicates is going to be needed at some point in the future. It's not currently planned in our capital improvements program. So there are no current improvements planned for that roadway segment, with the exception of our transportation master plan, or not master plan, our capital improvements plan as a signal plan for the intersection of LeMay and Country Club. That's the overall road network. Again, this does not show roadway extensions that are being considered by the city of Fort Collins. That would be roads like taking Turnberry, extending it south, or they've got Soniga, kind of parallel Vine coming across in that area. So there again is Country Club in the overall roadway network. It is a 1.5 miles in either direction to go north to Douglas Road or south to Vine right now for traffic. So it's not like there's an adjacent roadway that, traffic easily moves onto if you were to do major traffic calming measures or something like that.
So the trucks are using it to avoid the Riverside, Fort Collins truck route now, or they're coming off of the interstate?
I think that's part of it. If Mulberry itself is getting congested, or if they are out to try to avoid the trip down Riverside through the city of Fort Collins and on North College, if they're using routing software, it's potentially giving them a route that picks up Country Club Road as a shorter route or a less congested or faster route. Kind of depends on what parameters they're using.
Would they be getting off of the Mountain Vista exit on I-25 and then coming across?
Yeah, they generally are going to be coming off Mountain Vista exit and coming across. And again, there was some thought that, it was maybe a combination of effects of Owl Canyon when we were working on that roadway, as well as the kind of prolonged construction activities that were occurring on 287 with CDOT's project to widen that highway. And again, we've got some data that we'll show you. If we talk about functional classification, kind of goes to how the roads are fit into our network. You can see the red roads are our arterial roads, ones like Douglas Road or County Road 17. Country Club Road is a minor collector, so it's down there in the range of, it still provides a connection, but it's not intended to provide, its priority isn't mobility the same way an arterial road is. And so that goes to whether or not you would consider a truck restriction being applicable to a roadway with that kind of functional classification. Commissioner Cavalis.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Why is it that, I guess that's LeMay going south, north-south, and it's considered a major collector?
In our system, and actually I've got a map of the city of Fort Collins' transportation master plan, and they've actually got LeMay classified somewhat differently. So they've got some.
But we're classifying it as a major collector?
It's a major collector.
And why? Because it seems like those two roads are somewhat comparable in terms of, capacity or that sort of thing.
There's actually a lot of traffic that comes up LeMay. I mean, LeMay is a fairly major north-south connection, and actually there's a lot of traffic right now that comes up LeMay and then turns and goes east on Country Club, and that's actually why the volumes on Country Club on that east segment, east of LeMay, are higher than they are going west.
Are you able to speak to the log jams that I think occur at that intersection of Country Club and LeMay?
We know
It can be pretty messy.
Yeah, and that's actually why we're going to be putting a signal in. And, with that signal project would come in additional turn lanes because we have a lot of traffic that it's a stop condition and they're having to queue up and they want to make a right turn. So we could increase capacity by putting in additional laneage and putting it under signal control.
What's the time frame for that, Mark, approximately?
I believe it's the next 3 years, 2 to 3 years.
Thank you.
And then again, there's Country Club. This is the city of Fort Collins. They're currently adopted transportation master plan, so it does not currently show the extension of Seneca to the south. But as you can see, they're showing LeMay. And so the color coding in this description is blue are 2-lane arterials, and actually the magenta color.
One, Suniga?
Suniga parallels fine here. Let me get a pointer. So it's this one here.
That's Suniga?
Yes. Although it's going to change, it's going to tie back in at a slightly different location, but it basically is paralleling Vine.
Does it run over to Turnberry and tie in? Does it tie in?
Yeah, so if they put in the Turnberry extension down here, it would get down to Suniga.
How extended is Suniga at this point? It's only,
It's
just-
over in this area. It's coming
yeah,
from College.
yep.
Does it get to me? Okay.
And what's its classification?
It's an arterial in the city's plan. The blue was a 2-lane arterial, and the magenta was 4-lane arterial. So in terms of where we have kind of current truck restrictions, this is again just for your reference in this area. So there are currently,
Where are they?
yeah, I'm trying to get it to go.
Yeah, it's probably the only one.
Sorry, I've got to get it off the highlighter mode. So there are currently truck restrictions. There are signs actually up that say no commercial carriers, local deliveries only. And those occur immediately south of 54G on Taft Hill Road and Overland Trail. As well, there are no truck signs on Gregory Road, pretty much north, that segment between US 280, or State Highway 1, and the intersection of LeMay and Country Club Road. And those truck restrictions on Gregory Road have been in for as long as anybody here is aware of.
How long have those truck restrictions been on Taft Hill?
They were put in probably back in the time frame when 54G was still on the state highway system.
What was the reason for that?
They didn't want trucks going through the city of Fort Collins and bypassing the way station on I-25.
So it was mainly a city-driven process?
I don't know if
probably.
Brian has
It would have been a regulatory thing where the truckers could be bypassing the way station that they should.
We've got a
be going
remote
through.
way station on Taft Hill all the time, on the south, just south of Harmony, right? I mean, it's set up 3 days a week, isn't
Portable
it?
scales.
Portable scale, yeah, don't they?
Is it that often? I always.
Well, I mean, it's not that often. So, maybe you ought to remove that.
That would be a board election. I mean, if that's something that the Board of County
That's an
Commissioners
arterial, that's a major arterial roadway.
is an arterial roadway.
It isn't, the trucks on County Road 19 that drive behind my house every single day, obviously aren't adhering to that rule.
And again, this is for commercial carriers, through haul semi-trucks,
Well,
not local. So if somebody's got a local delivery down in that area, it's not illegal or, they're not violating any restriction to go make that delivery.
No, they are not. They're going to 34.
Kmart. Take things out. So the Martin Marietta trucks, they go down 19, don't they?
Those are local.
Right, those are essentially local deliveries.
Considered local.
Yeah.
100 lots of.
I mean,
trucks. Okay.
So this really, those restrictions were intended to focus on the commercial carriers that were through trips. You know, they had a destination. They were potentially just passing through the city of Fort Collins or, headed on down I-25.
Yeah, but it's silly because they can just go over to Shields.
There is no current sign on Shields.
Right, that's
It
what I'm
may
saying.
well have been restricted at one point in time, but
Yeah, I mean, that's.
sign's not up
that's
anymore.
dumb.
Sign disappeared. Probably nobody's doing that anymore, though. I don't think that's probably being done very much.
So just in terms of traffic counts, just have some comparative counts up here for Country Club Road and Douglas Road, since those tend to get kind of compared in terms of traffic volumes. And so you can see that, while traffic volumes back, in the
How could that be?
late 90s, early 2000s were fairly comparable. They diverged pretty quickly, and we're seeing a lot more growth in traffic on Country Club Road.
Are those measured or predicted?
These are measured values.
There's so much growth on Douglas Road. I can't even believe that's true. You're flat on trips from 2005 to 2010. It's when they built all that Hearthfire subdivision and everything.
This is that piece of Douglas Road immediately west of
Oh,
State
west
Highway
of
1.
Highway 1.
That has the
Oh,
higher-
yeah, that doesn't have anything on
That
it.
has the higher traffic. That actually has the higher traffic volumes
Well,
on
that's
Douglas.
well, that's not apples. That's apples to oranges.
And again, just, it goes back to growth. This shows the platted parcels up in that area. And, if you get into developments that are occurring east of Turnberry in the city of Fort Collins, there's another development, going through the process up here in the city of Fort Collins. So we've seen a fair amount of growth. If they've got destinations to the school or to the shopping center, that goes to overall vehicular traffic. In terms of truck numbers, these are some numbers based on classifier counts when we've put the classifiers out, or the one value shown for 2019 on Country Club Road was based on, we put cameras out and then counted trucks during the period from 6 in the morning till 8 p.m. at night. It's important to note that 2019 count that has 25 semi-trucks was put out after the temporary restriction signs were put in on Country Club Road. So historically, we've had semi-truck volumes somewhere in the range of, 88 in 2015. They dropped pretty dramatically in 16, back up pretty dramatically in 2018 to approaching 100 a day. Total trucks picks up other trucks besides semis, so it picks up 2 and 3 axle delivery trucks in the count. And so we've seen a pretty high, significant increase in total truck traffic on Country Club as well. And again, then I'm comparing truck traffic with the count we have on Douglas Road as well. So again, we've had upwards of 100 semi-trucks a day using that connection on Country Club Road. It's currently, again, classified as a minor collector.
Do the traffic mapping software, do they reflect a temporary truck prohibition?
They don't really, Bill first, when those went into effect, he contacted Google and, let them know that it's there. But they don't really,
They don't update.
don't tend to pick that up. More recently, the city of Fort Collins was just contacted by, I believe it's Garmin, that they do truck routing software. And they actually were interested in knowing from the city of Fort Collins, and that information got passed on to us. They were interested in knowing where we have any truck restrictions in place so that they would attempt to develop that or incorporate that into their routing software. And that's probably the one way you're going to make the most impact on actual usage of a road. Certainly enforcement, has an effect. The signage has some effect. You still may have trucks that get onto that road because they're routed there for whatever reason, and once they're on it, they're just going to make that connection. They're going to drive it. They're a through haul user, kind of one time going through. The other thing to note is we see a lot of RV traffic. So we do see a lot of travel trailers utilize the country club connection on the weekend. If we were to put in a truck restriction, the only thing we're proposing is that it would apply to commercial semi-trucks. So it's not a length-based restriction, it's a vehicular-based restriction, but it's restricting the tractor trailer rigs that are long. It's due to the fact that we've got a pretty constrained intersection at the entrance to the country club. Brian has looked at, other intersections with a program that's called Auto Turn that allows you to put a vehicle configuration and see how well it can make a turning movement. And the intersection of State Highway 1 and Country Club Road is constrained as well.
Would a permanent restriction appear any differently in the mapping software, or would we have the same issues?
I would hope that, well,
Or
again,
a long-term restriction, I should say.
I think it would show up in the specific software that truckers use. It may not show up in an application like Google Maps, because they don't do their mapping based on a vehicular type.
Yeah.
They're just giving a route to any user of their software, and they don't discriminate or distinguish by what you're operating for a vehicle.
Okay.
So we looked at, there are a pretty high number of direct driveways onto Country Club east of LeMay. They're somewhere around 40, 15 as you go on that west segment. We've got 7 street intersections that occur along that 1 mile length east of LeMay. Got pretty narrow shoulders, and we've got the lake that constrains that route from a horizontal planform configuration, and it also exists fairly close to the roadway. So those are just considerations that would potentially support or play into the consideration of restricting semi-trucks on this segment of roadway.
And I think you mentioned that you had looked at some other intersections. Is this a unique situation, or is this likely to be a situation that would occur in other places?
I'll let Brian speak to that in more detail.
The geometric situation, I'm sure, exists in other locations. What somewhat sets this apart is the large number of vehicles. If you've got a road with much lower traffic, a truck can manage to get through without tying everything up. We found if a big semi rig runs through that country club entrance intersection, it may take 50 feet back of the stop line before they finish their turn. And that means if somebody is stopped there and someone's behind them and someone behind them, all those have to get out of the way, or the truck's going to sit there until they get that kind of break. And that tremendously affects the operation of an intersection with that kind of traffic.
Because I think one of the considerations to consider something like this would be how unique is this particular situation, because obviously everybody that lives on a busy road is going to want something like this, but are we setting a precedent that we'll have a bunch of other people coming in for the same request, especially if we just push the balloon onto some other roads? But you sound pretty confident that there's a unique situation here. I wouldn't say unique, but there's an uncommon situation here.
That's the way I would classify it.
Okay.
Mark and Brian,
Yes, sir.
I suppose from a public safety standpoint, are there unique characteristics of this road? You've already stated how it's a collector, a minor collector street, but and it's narrow, and there's really not a lot of space to expand that capacity other than paving the shoulders at some point. But could you speak to that at all? That this road is unique in terms of greater risks for, public safety because of all the driveways and the nature of the road and the, Long Pond being on the north side, stuff like that.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, certainly there are safety considerations. I guess I would say that it's totally unique from that standpoint. I mean, we have lots of, our rural road system has
The whole
edge
Buckhorn.
drop-offs.
The whole
you know,
Buckhorn.
Lots of driveways. There, from the standpoint of a roadway in a somewhat urban setting, or it's sort of in a transition zone where, it's a roadway that was out in a more rural area. It's now being more and more urbanized in the surrounding area, and the traffic volumes are starting to reflect that. Certainly, it's a major change. There's, depending on who you talk to, certainly there are people that are concerned about the lack of shoulders or about the lack of pedestrian facilities along that roadway. That's something that perhaps should be looked at or considered in the future.
And as far as your projected average daily traffic counts that you showed us,
Right.
various ranges and whatnot, were you able to show how that might vary depending on whether, for example, Turnberry, whether Turnberry actually gets run all the way through to Suniga or Vine, how that might impact the ADT on Country Club Road?
We don't have modeling that demonstrates that. Certainly, if you look at the Montava development or what they're proposing or projecting, they rely on development of Turnberry to the south and the other portions of the arterial road segment that run south
Okay.
from Mountain Vista to convey a lot of that traffic. And they're projecting that only 5% of their traffic would use Country Club in the long term.
If they put that extension in.
If they put all those extensions in and fully develop their network, even 5% of their traffic is a couple thousand vehicles a day. So again, our 2040 master plan that's based on modeling, traffic modeling that the MPO does, would predict that Country Club Road would get to be somewhere around 12,000 trips a day. So another 50% growth in traffic from where it is now. How soon that will happen is, again, probably largely a function of how fast and what kind of development occurs to the east in Fort Collins.
Thank you.
I guess what I'm not understanding is we have a temporary restriction now.
Yep.
On commercial trucks, which apparently it looks like it's had some effect.
Mhm.
There's no expiration date on that, is there?
Well, when we came to you originally, we made it a length restriction, and we had said we wanted to put it in place during the time period when Owl Canyon
Okay.
was under construction and when 287 was under construction. So now that that project has been completed, we ought to either
End it or do something.
end it or
extend
or make it a.
So it's a length restriction. You're talking now about a classification restriction.
Right, we've worked with Frank and the county attorney's office to develop something that he was more comfortable with. I don't know if we'll let,
Yeah, so
Frank,
I
come
guess
up
my
and talk to it a
question
little more.
is, how is the outcome going to be any different? We have a temporary truck restriction now based on length, and one proposal is a classification long-term restriction. How will the outcome as far as truck traffics be any different? Won't it be kind of the same thing? We'll probably be down to a few trucks.
it'll be
25?
somewhat the same. I mean, you may still see a few trucks through there. We would put different signage up to try to make it a little more visible.
Okay.
And then I think as well, if it's a long-term restriction, we can get it into the truck routing software. And so if it gets incorporated into that, that will have a further effect on, diminishing use by that type of truck.
Have you seen any unintended consequences of the temporary length restriction? Has that caused any problems, complaints, traffic problems, safety problems on any other neighboring adjacent roads that have been negatively affected by truck traffic not going down Country Club and going somewhere
Hasn't been in
else?
effect long enough.
It probably hasn't been in effect that long. I mean, I think we heard from some people on Douglas Road that, they were seeing truck traffic. I think there are changes that we make on our road system that are going to affect use of the road regardless of whether there's a restriction. For example, once we put a signal in at State Highway 1 and Douglas Road, which is very much needed from a safety standpoint, that will make that route more attractive
yeah.
and more usable by all types of vehicular traffic, not the least of which will be trucks, because they've got a protected signal that they can pass through.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, in part, hopefully, the city of Fort Collins over time will get Turnberry and get it extended. That's really not going to go to the truck traffic part of it. Certainly, part of the hope is that trucks will stay on the state highway system. Really, that's where they're intended to be operating in general. But they're always, like many people, they're looking for shorter, quicker routes, from point A to point B. And that's happened to be Country Club.
Okay.
Just so you're aware, there's the reason why you can't get, the short-term ones are limited to 90 days by the statute, so there's a time restriction in there. The other thing is, they did this in Jefferson County, and they got sued, but they won, because the trucking companies said, look, you can't tell us where we can drive and where we can't drive, and it's costing us more money, because now we have to go around. In that case, the court said, no, the county commissioners have the authority to regulate the roads, and they can put reasonable restrictions on it, but anyway,
Did they support those restrictions with certain findings or certain characteristics of the road that they were restricting? Similar to this, hopefully?
Yes.
I mean, you have to have a logical reason for it, I'm
Right.
assuming.
And
Defensible.
that's right, and it does become a little bit of a slippery slope of, well, why this road and not another road?
Yeah, especially when this board, told the county engineer 2 weeks ago to investigate if there were things he could do to improve the geometry of the road and things like that, to make it more roadworthy for trucks, and he did none of those things. So
Well-
I'm sitting here right now, and he hasn't done that. So I think that probably does. I think it probably is a lack defensibility.
How can you fix that intersection?
We
at
didn't
the
look
country
at it.
club?
I think no. We
Well,
did-
and what would it
we did look
cost?
at it. I think in long term, if you wanted to address the Country Club intersection with the Country Club facility, you might look at a roundabout at that location.
At the country club?
Yeah. I mean, we'd have to do more work to identify, how would it fit in, but potentially you could put a roundabout, it would be three-legged roundabout,
Mm-hmm.
and it would have a geometry that would be appropriate to handle, most vehicle types. It'd be more urban roundabout, maybe something similar to what went in at Shields and Vine, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, well,
And
thanks.
see.
So what would you ask? You'd ask us to take action at this
Well-
future administrative matters meeting if we were so
Yeah,
inclined?
I mean, if it's something the board wants us to bring forward for your further consideration, we would bring, it's basically an ordinance
Yep.
that would be voted on at a future administrative matters meeting.
Otherwise, Mark, you'll lift the temporary restriction?
Yep.
Well, you don't,
I mean-
have to. We could re-extend it, or whatever.
Well,
as
that would take board action as well.
Yes.
So that's the direction
Right.
you're looking for?
Yeah.
is what to bring back.
What to bring back, if anything, because technically the
Well, the reason for
temporary restriction. ought
Yeah,
to
the
come
reason
off.
for the temporary is no longer existing, so you'd have to do a short term, or a temporary with another reason, I would assume.
Get the hell out of here.
And again, we would be out to change out the signage, and part of what we would need to do is if it's going to be a long-term restriction, we would go back to CDOT and get permits to put signage up on their system, because we really have to have advance notice signs out on the state highway as well.
Well, this is not a designated truck route, so I don't know why we would want to make expensive improvements to put trucks on an alternative to a truck route. That doesn't seem logical to me.
Well, it's a dangerous section of road. And so, with future development, it's going to, you can increase the traffic regardless. And you're not, I mean, you're going to have more, you'll have more box trucks and everything else. You'll have Amazon trucks. I mean, you'll have everything.
Or drones.
Yeah, but, and so,
And we've started to do some conceptual.
and what you will do, and here's what
Evaluations.
I guarantee you will
You
do.
could look
If
at
you
the
really is going to be that 20,000 truck trips a day, as indicated in your previous slide, yeah, I don't shake your head at me.
It's 12.
Yeah, I bet.
That was
Then
total.
they will go somewhere. They will go somewhere. And so they will go down Turnberry. They will go on to Suniga or whatever that road's called. You're just going to put those problems on somebody else. And so, I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying this isn't a reasonable solution, but I'm just telling you, you're just going to put the problem somewhere else.
But isn't it true that those roads that were mentioned are,
They're arterial roadways.
Two-lane
so
arterial
they're-
roads, though.
They're
they're better equipped to handle this type of truck traffic?
correct.
Well, they have a higher classification. There's essentially, I mean, and geometrically, they may be better. They may have better options there, but they're essentially two-lane roads, no center turn lane.
An arterial.
In the
an
case of
arterial is gonna
Turnberry,
have-
it's two-lane roadway, no center turn lane. That's what you just told us
I
that.
thought Seninga was 4.
For Suniga is, Turnberry is 2.
Two-lane arterials in the city of Fort Collins generally have center turn, I mean, they have turn lane
Maybe. Does it have one now?
medians.
Does it have one now? I didn't think it did, but I don't know. Maybe you guys are right. It's a two-lane road. Country Club, also a two-lane road.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine. What's the will of the board?
Thank you. I think you should bring that temporary, or short term, what did you call it?
Long term.
It's basically a long-term restriction.
That means it can be removed if there's reasons later, or problems later, or those roads don't get built or whatever, or don't function well. I think I would support that.
Okay. There you go.
And again, it's not banning all trucks. You know, the residents along there will not see this as going far enough. Or many of them will not see it as going far enough. Because they're concerned about increased volumes of traffic in general and just usage by
But I think
trucks or RVs or,
that
but-
may be the case. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mark, but that's, I'm sure there's accuracy in what you just said, but at the same time, there will be many people that are going to be pleased.
yes, semi-trucks are a major consideration and
Put
major
4,000
concern.
homes out there, you're gonna have more traffic on that road. That's just logical.
And you'll still look at improvements.
Yeah, I mean, it's not part of our capital improvements plan, but we're looking at conceptual needs along that roadway and what we might do to address or make future improvements.
I'd like you to bring this issue forward.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your
Mhm.
time.
No other items unless you have any questions about this afternoon. You have 6 consent items. We
Yeah,
don't
hopefully this
expect
weather will
anything
keep
out
people
of the
from coming
ordinary.
out.
There's one item that Janine's been working on the development agreement back and forth, so she'll let you know if she needs
If we
to do something
we may not
different.
have findings and resolution, or we may have to table it.
Or, well, probably not she'll let you know, but I
Okay.
think otherwise there shouldn't be anything out of the ordinary.
They all
with any
seem
of these.
simple.
Yeah.
They all seem simple. Okay. The yellow roof rezoning.
See you in a bit.
All right, bye. Board's adjourned.